Hello, everyone. I have been debating whether to do this episode for ages now. No matter how careful I try to be during this episode, I run the risk. I know this is going to be controversial. I know I'm going to get a lot of feedback, but there's things called thought experiments. Yes, and they're supposed to be thought experiments, not emotional knee jerk reactionary. I'll get into that in a minute. But like every book that's written to a degree, terror strikes coming soon to a city near you from me, probably a better example. But even my nonfictions engage in a degree of thought experiments, speculations. What ifs? This is how it was. What if it would have been this way or that way? Thought experiments, but you cannot prove books, movies, uh, right? All those things to a degree are a thought experiment in a what if. And hopefully we're smart enough to think about these things and engage in the thought experiment and learn from them what we can as best we can, so that if something comes along that applies, those what ifs apply. It's like military strategy. You're always wargaming. What if? What if? What if they do this, we need to do this? What might happen? What are the best responses? If you're not preparing, uh, you could end up a victim of your own circumstances, failing, lack of preparation. Uh, I Let me admit, right? No matter how careful I am, I'm just going to be controversial, and there's going to be pushback. I'm sure some of you may think of things that I might forget to say that won't be included in here. Hey, reach out to me, josephmleonard.us/contact. Uh, Other things I say, maybe less articulately than you might be able to formulate in your mind, and would be well, I understand what he's saying, but it would be better to say it this way. It's a little more careful, a little more diplomatic, a little less aggressive, or whatever, right? Okay, well, I'm not trying to stall here, and this is important setup. But the thought experiment, killing baby Hitler, right? The thought experiment. There have been tons of books and movies, even like the series Man in the High Castle, right? Speculations, what if Germany had won the war? Well, okay, thought experiment. What if indeed, if you had a time machine, you had the chance you could go back and kill baby Hitler? All right, the knee jerk reaction, the emotional response would be, well, of course, I would kill baby Hitler and save countless lives. Well, would it have really? If you look at history and all the factors going into and leading up to World War II, it's likely if you killed baby Hitler, the National Socialists, later called fascists, would have likely, due to the conditions, come into power anyway without Hitler. What if someone as fanatically evil, but smarter, right? These people are evil. They're not dumb. But somebody who would be more strategic in their thinking and their approach to things and not made the mistakes Hitler made once become Fuhrer, and indeed the entire nation and everyone down, right? The National Socialists on the way up had a figurehead leader for the most part, but it was a collective, almost Borg mindset. There were a lot of minds, a lot of intelligent political strategists, as well as some military strategists involved that helped them come to power. They would have likely still come to power had you killed baby Hitler. So my point to this point, before I go further, what if it would have been worse? You can't prove a what if. Unless if you have the time machine or an interdimensional travel device to go to another alternate reality where that what if played out, and you see, like the Stargate SG-1 TV series, the quantum mirror interdimensional travel where Daniel goes into another dimension where the Goa'uld haven't come yet, and he's warning people or trying to warn people, and no one wants to listen, and Earth falls. Well, again, that's not a book, but or a movie, but a sci-fi thought experiment story script. And we are to try to look at those and think about those things so we don't react emotionally knee-jerk fashion if and when something pops up. We need to proceed. We may not have time to sit around and debate for long periods, but we have to have at least war gamed in advance or mildly thought about and try to apply logic and reason, not emotional knee-jerk reactions that could turn a situation that's going to be bad to a situation that's even worse. Like the kill baby Hitler scenario. What if Hess would have become the Fuhrer? And they went at the Soviets, and the West fell in line with the fascists to defeat the just as equally evil Soviets. Remember, the Soviets invaded Finland before Hitler militarily invaded. Yeah, annexation. Those areas welcomed the Nazis, and they wanted to be annexed. Not a shot was fired. The actual first shots of World War II were kind of fired by the Soviets' invasion of Finland. And remember, the Soviets invaded Poland the same time Germany and the Nazis did, coming in from the other side. As Churchill said, Soviets were not our allies. They were a temporary, necessary partner, siding with a lesser evil to defeat a greater evil. So where was I going with that? My apologies. Again, so many things. Again, history. You've got to look at all the factors, not just, oh yeah, kill baby Hitler, everything would be perfect. No, could have been a lot worse, actually. Could have been worse. What if indeed Hess came to power, fought the Soviets really first, the West didn't get involved or openly, because in the United States, remember Madison Square Garden, not the current one, the one that existed before, the Democrats and the left were supporting the Nazis. They held Nazi rallies here in New York for the Nazis. And indeed, if the West would have gotten behind Hitler, well, not Hitler, but Hess and the Nazis to fight the Soviets, because remember, Stalin killed more of his own people than Hitler killed of his own people. And yes, Mao killed more than both of them combined. So trying to whitewash history that the Soviets were an ally is a bastardization of history. Read the Churchill autobiographies and memoirs and diaries and notes and declassified information, right? Churchill knew right up front, they are not our allies. They are as big as enemy as Nazis, but a temporary partnership to have the two-front war is probably the only way the Nazis would have been defeated. So if that would have changed, if that formula would have changed, killing baby Hitler wouldn't have made less death. It could have created a scenario where there were more deaths. All right, again, thinking. These are thought experiments. I can't prove or disprove any of this any which way. These are all theoretical, what ifs, speculations. But the knee-jerk reaction, oh yeah, kill baby Hitler in a heartbeat, and everything would be perfect, is fallacy, fantasy, delusional mindset. It's a hope. It's a desire. Wouldn't it be nice if indeed we could have, and it would have turned out great, but it could have turned out worse. All right, I've kind of repeated a few things, so let me move on. And the only note I have here, baby Hitler and Apollo. Let's pivot. What do I mean by Apollo? Let's do another thought experiment. One that is still emotional. People died, and they died a horrendous deaths, and their families affected. But an alternative could have thrown off the entire planet and affected the entire nation. In fact, affected the entire planet. The Apollo project. Remember, before actually getting to the moon and all that, the Apollo capsule fire that roasted 3 of our astronauts alive. Don't take this the wrong way, but in a way, thank God it was no doubt painful and horrifying, but it happened so fast, so they didn't linger. And I'll get to that point in a minute. It almost was humane, and that happened potentially saved thousands of other lives. That's where I'm going with this. Please bear with me. It will make sense if we think about it. Had you been able to go back in time in a time machine, intertimental travel, as I coin it, right? It goes better with interstellar and interdimensional, intertimental ship. Go back and just change one of the things that was changed after that horrific incident and fire that happened while on the planet. That's a key incident, key factor here. So bear with me. We were able to examine the remains of the ship and make improvements, which then saved lives later. What if one of the changes was it was a pure oxygen environment in the capsule? Oh, any spark, poof, instant ball of flame. So they went to an oxygen nitrogen mix. So it's less, it's still dangerous, but less flammable, less I'm not an engineer. I'm not a fireman. So this is one of those things. I'm not sure how specifically to properly articulate this thought. But let's say you could have made that change. and one other tweak. So the spark wouldn't have happened, the fire wouldn't have happened here while it was on the ground before blasting off. You temporarily saved those 3 astronauts, knots. But what if then it lifted off and it blew up like Challenger in space? Or worse, further, when they were already partway to the moon or at the moon, orbiting the moon, and the capsule completely fell apart and was inoperable, and they were stuck in space forever orbiting the moon. What a horrific, not quite as instant as the fiery death, and the psyche on not just them and their families, but the entire nation. Now, I don't know, it's never been declassified, or at least to my knowledge, but I suspect. All right, again, speculation, what if? I don't know for certain, but I suspect all of our astronauts were sent up with cyanide capsules. Indeed. What if the ship didn't catch fire but became crippled while orbiting the moon? Do they take cyanide to go of their own accord, or do they die when the oxygen runs out, or do they die? It couldn't live that long without the oxygen. They just starve to death. Horrible, horrible death. And the psychological effect, either of those scenarios. Oh, yeah, they had cyanide, they committed suicide. Well, can you imagine the collective horror of the nation to have to contemplate that thought, given that news, or not told it because we didn't want people to know, yeah, we sent them up with cyanide, so if something like this happened, they could, check out rather than die when the air ran out or die when the food ran out. None of those scenarios are rosy and happy. None of them are really better than the other alternatives. But that's the alternative, the thought experiment, the what if, the speculation. What if indeed you prevented the fire, but then they died in space? Then there's no wreckage to examine to figure out what went wrong and improve the system. So then the next set of astronauts go up and they die in space. Or worse, what if the capsule explodes into a ball of flames during liftoff? And that affects the rest of the Saturn stage rockets, and it goes crashing into the tens of thousands of onlookers that were there to watch every liftoff. And tens of thousands of people burned a fiery death. The Apollo program shut down. The Soviets go to the moon, land on the moon, and they wouldn't have claimed it for all humanity. The Soviet flag would have been there, claimed for the Soviet motherland. And what that would have all entailed, talk about what if a speculation for the planet, the rest of the Cold War could have potentially played out. The point here is, if I could fix that and save those astronauts, everything would have been perfect. Kill baby Hitler, everything would have been perfect. Not necessarily. You can't prove that true. I can't prove the other worst case scenario true either. None of us can. But the point is thinking. It could be worse. That's why our nation Other nations, for the most part, some exceptions are made, have a policy to not assassinate a foreign leader. You make a martyr of them. You then further incite the fanatics of the enemy and can make it worse. That's why we don't generally assassinate foreign leaders, especially during a period of wartime. Now, right, there are exceptions. Or let me give an example. During our Revolutionary War, it is said the British, took many attempted pot shots at George Washington to try to assassinate him. And he became known as Teflon, right? You can't kill this guy. And the sense of divine protection, divine providence around him grew and emboldened us and helped us defeat the enemy. See, by attempting to kill, it's like the saying, right? If you're going to go at the king, you better not miss. As the British learned with our colonists, they emboldened us, they strengthened us by not killing Washington. And what if they had? The psychological effect of making him a martyr and rallying more around the revolutionary cause. That's why all of these are thought experiments. You think, or you may emotionally knee-jerk react, well, would obviously make things better. Not necessarily. Okay, I think I'm going to end here. And again, I apologize. I know I could potentially, if put it in a book, right, spend 3 years trying to get the thoughts together, better articulated. And that's why I kept putting off doing this episode. I know this is going to be controversial. I know this is going to be upsetting. It's not a defense of Hitler. And no doubt there will be some morons out there trying to claim I am defending Hitler or something, or I am being pro-Nazi here. No, I'm saying alternatives would have played out. Some might be better, some might be worse for world history. That's all I'm saying here. There will be some who will, of course, take my comment out of context, either unintentionally or purposely, willfully, and malice aforethought to try to attack me, attack the show, attack you podcastees, as I call you, the listeners, right? I'm a podcaster, you're a podcastee, as I coined for Podcasting Quick Start Guide. They're going to want to attack because they don't want people to think. They only ever want them to react emotionally. Emotionally hysterical people are easier to manipulate and control. So I'm not trying to get you to believe anything, accept anything, other than the need to think, to apply logic, reason, and understand. Hope is great. Hope is wonderful. We need more hope in the world, but hope itself is not a strategy. You can't stumble through life, coast through life, never thinking about, just blindly wandering everywhere, blindly wandering down that neighborhood you know is a dangerous neighborhood. Oh, everything will be fine. It'll be perfect. What could go wrong? Just right. We have to think and know sometimes bad things happen to good people. And like at beforeitsnews.com, fight, flight, fade article, a contemplation following terror strikes coming soon to a city near you. What about, I wasn't going to go into this, but I better now. The Ariana Grande concert in New York. I think that was Madison Square Garden. More people were hurt and killed in the sheeple panic trying to escape the building that day of that concert rather than so fight, unless if you're armed or trained and have the right training and opportunity to fight back. That's not always an option. Flight, panic, becoming part of the sheeple. If there's an active shooter, you become a big target in that large group trying to run. They're not going to shoot at the fade option. If you're on the other side of the arena from the shooter, hide behind the seat. Is that seat going to protect you? No. Out of sight, out of mind, though. If you're not a flashy, shiny, panicking, running around target, they're going to want to shoot at the hundreds or thousands that are crowded there. They can hit more of them and do more damage than they'll care about you hiding behind the seat at the other end of the arena. So fight, flight, fade. Again, I don't want you paranoid. I'm not trying to sell fear porn here. I just want you to have a modicum of situational awareness. I'm not talking about like in the movies where the CIA guy goes into the diner, finds the booth in the back so he can make sure he knows where all the exits are and can see everything and everyone is always in. I don't want you paranoid, but I want you to resolve. You will be a thinker, not a panicker, in the fractions of a second you have to make those decisions on what to do. You won't automatically make yourself a victim to your own stupidity and not thinking. Again, being part of the sheeple crowd, which you may not get shot, you may not get blown up, you may not get beaten to death by an assailant, but you might get trampled by somebody else. The Great White Concert at, I forget where that was, the station, right? Was the place, the venue where the pyrotechnics created the fire and it spread. More people died because people panicked and people tripped at the exit, creating a pileup, and less people were able to orderly fashion leave the building, were then trapped in the building and burned to death because of panic. And I understand it's difficult to not panic in a situation like that. Our fight or flight is part of our nature and wants to take over. But we as humans have to resolve in advance. As I said, I want you to resolve. You will be a thinker. You only have fractions of a second to scan, think, quickly strategize. What is my best option so I don't put myself out of the frying pan into the fire of another situation as dangerous or worse? All right, well, this went off the rails and down other rabbit holes than expected. But whether it be the baby Hitler example or the Apollo example, remember, think, not just emote. The obvious notion, oh yeah, I'd kill baby Hitler in a heartbeat. That's the emotional response without thinking, oh my God, yes, things could potentially turn out worse. That's why we generally don't kill other leaders during times of war and make martyrs of them. Someone as evil, but smarter, because they're evil, not dumb, could then take over and make matters worse. The devil you know versus the devil you don't know, as the saying goes. All right. Thank you all. I don't know how much time I spent. Please, now, if you've watched this, you know. I know I'll be attacked. I know the show will be attacked. This is controversial. You now know what I've said and why I've said it. I'm going to need some of you to defend me out there because they will, of course, they've lied for 3 years about me, and they lied about me forever, even before the show, right? People who have not read Terror Strikes Coming Soon to a City Near You. Oh, he's a Republican. He's a conservative. He's a constitutionalist. He's one of the, so he must be racist and sexist and homophobic and Islamic, blah, 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 despite the chapter on Tokyo calling out the Om Shinryoku Christian cult terrorist sect that engaged in terrorism. It's not just about Islamic terrorism. Terrorism of all kinds, though, the Gijas, as I coin them, are the biggest threat currently. And going back to Jefferson's days, right? People don't think about the Marine hymn from the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli. Do you know what that means? Do you know why that's there? Do you not understand? We fought Giza's Islamic fundamentalist radicals then as now. And centuries before, the Crusades were a response to Islamic conquest, overtaking Christian and Jewish lands, beheading, killing Christians and Jews. The same thing is repeating today as happened then. The Crusades weren't Christians and just deciding, oh, let's go kill a bunch of Muslims for no reason. They were a response, a pushback. They overran Spain. We pushed back and took back some of those lands. And now we're giving up those lands today that we reclaimed, we fought back for, so that all people could live in peace. History may not repeat, but it sure does rhyme a lot. And that's why they want you emotional, not a thinker. They don't want you to know civics. They don't want you to know history. They don't want you to know economics, because an emotionally hysterical moron, uneducated moron, is easier to manipulate and control. Now, I know you're not you know the people I'm talking about, though. Power and control, those who want it and try to yield it, can only exert that over, or better can, over a less and less and less educated populace. Anyway, all right. Thank you all. Take care. God bless. Love you all. Like and subscribe to Constitutionalist Politics Podcast and share episodes. We need your help. Thank you for having tuned into another Constitutionalist podcast show. I really appreciate that you stopped by. Again, please like, share, subscribe. We need you to help spread the Constitutionalist movement. Thank you again. Take care. God bless. Love you all.